important are books? Let's go on an adventure. Hello and welcome to Capricious Conversations. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy that you're here. Today we're going to take a slightly different adventure because, like I said in the beginning, adventures don't have to always be going somewhere. A lot of times, a lot of people find their adventures between the pages of a book. And you'll notice I have my lovely stack of books here because what we are going to talk about today is 5 books that have changed my life. Now, obviously, maybe not obviously, but I'll just go ahead and tell you, the book that has changed and shaped my life the most continuously throughout my life since I was a little teeny tiny kid is my Bible. And it's a living book. Every time you read it shows you something new. So that's the book that has changed my life the most. So today we're going to be talking about the 5 books after that have changed my life. Now, in light of Harper Lee's passing, it kind of led me to go back and review some of these things. And the first book that changed my life was Tequila Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This book is written so amazingly. There's so many nuggets of truth in it that you can pull out from just the personality of Scout and their family dynamic, but the best thing in this book to me is the personality of Atticus Finch, the dad of Jem and Scout. The thing I love about Atticus that Harper Lee wrote in the book is that he was the same man in his house as he was on the street. That one line completely changed my life. I don't want to be one of those people that changes depending on whom I'm around. And I've definitely been there before, and I think a lot of people are. We're one way when we're at work, we're another way when we're at church, we're another way when we're around our friends, we're another way when we go out to eat. They're just different people depending on who they're around. And I don't want to be that. I want to be real. I want to be the person that I am no matter where I am. And so this book, specifically that one line, completely changed my life when I was in 6th grade or something like that when I read it. So if you have not read it, Tequila Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Now I'm lumping these as one list item, and I can hear some of my Sherlockians crying foul. I know that there are many, many stories and that it was not actually a book when it was published, but stick with me here. The stories of Sherlock Holmes. All the stories of Sherlock Holmes. This changed my life in more ways than one. Reading this book, I learn a lot by watching, I learn a lot by looking, I'm a visual person. And so when I read these books, I was able to picture and kind of learn how to become an analytical thinker. Because Sherlock, he took all these context clues and he was able to put together the entire scenario of what happened. Just from little tiny context clues. And so when I read this, it taught me how to be an analytical thinker. But more than that, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was the one who completely shaped my writing style. From the time that I started reading these when I was 8 years old, all the way through school, this is kind of what I based my writing style on. No matter what I was writing, research papers, expository writing, even when I was just writing stories, this shaped my writing more than anything else. And I just love the relationships that are in Sherlock. I love the growth of them, of the characters over that arc. The first story I ever read was The Speckled Band, which is apparently, I've tried reading it to 8-year-olds since then, and not too many 8-year-olds take to it, so that may have to be one for people who are a little bit over the age of 8. But once I started reading these, I just couldn't get enough. I read them all in 3 or 4 months, something like that. I could not stop reading these because they're so very interesting, but they also have a lot to teach you. So if you are in the mood for a mystery, and if you like the BBC Sherlock show, you should definitely check this out. There are so many fanboy references to these books. Check out the complete Sherlock Holmes. You have to read all of them. The next book that changed my life, I read this, gosh, how old was I? I think I was about 10 or 11 years old when I read this book. And the lessons that are in here, the truths that are in here they'll shake you up, seriously. This book, you can't see it on the front, but you can maybe see it on the side. This is The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. So Corrie ten Boom was a Dutch watchmaker. She lived in Holland, and she Her and her family were Christians. They loved the Lord, and at the beginning of World War II, she became part of the resistance in the underground for hiding Jews. And she sort of became kind of a ringleader. They would do a lot of business through her shop and through telephone calls through her shop. And she would hide Jews in her home, but she would also help them get out of the city and get out of Holland into a safer place. Towards the end of the war, she actually was arrested and taken to a concentration camp. And she survived. She actually was taken to a work camp first and then 2 separate concentration camps. And she ended up in the Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany, which it wasn't really a concentration camp. That one was a death camp. And they had the gas chambers, and people on a regular basis were taken there to be executed. And it's really the story of her reliance on God and her relationship with God that gets her through it. And she survived the concentration camp. And so she survived to write this book and tell her story of how God sustained her even in those horrible situations. And it's really a testament to her and her faith. None of the Jews that were hidden in her house were found. They were kept safe until there was an opportunity for them to be rescued by other members of the underground. And so this story, it's a story of survival, it's a story of faith, it's a story of perseverance, and it's really a story about relationship and love for people and for God. And so you should definitely check out The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. And maybe I should have done this differently. Pride and Prejudice, which I know can be kind of a polarizing book for some. I've found, and I'm not stereotyping here, but I have found that most guys that I talk to don't really like this book. I love this book. In fact, when I read this book, I could not put it down. I literally read the entire book in 3 days. I loved it so much. I love her writing style. I love the story. It's beautiful. It's a love story. But there's so much more than that. Like, it is a love story, and it's very romantic. And so if you're into that kind of thing, it's a chick flick in a book, basically. But the thing that is so wonderful about this book is that it's not a vapid chick flick. This book has women who are strong women who have, their own opinions and their own strengths and their own lives. But this book is really, if you get right down to it, this book is about not judging people before you know them. When Elizabeth meets Mr. Darcy, they both are so quick to judge each other, both of them. She's so quick to judge him and say that he's prideful because he's rich, and he's very quick to judge her and say that she's prejudiced because she's not as rich. I mean, she's not poor, but she's not wealthy. And so they're very quick to judge each other, and it's only after they get into this spending time with one another and get into this kind of friendship relationship that they're able to realize that, what they thought at first was not at all what was going on, and that the people that they really are come through when you give them time and when you spend time to find out who someone is. And so this book really taught me to not judge a book by its cover. To really spend time with people and find out who they are before you venture a judgment. We're so quick as human beings to offer a judgment at the very first sight of somebody. We call it, first impressions. And first impressions are important, but we're so quick to judge those first impressions. And what if somebody was having a bad day? What if they were it just wasn't their morning, or they haven't had their coffee yet, or, you don't know what happened to them before they got to you. So they might not be a bad person at all. They just might be having a really bad day. And we're so quick to judge that first impression and not give people a second chance. So this book, if it teaches you nothing else, give people a second chance. And lastly, this book completely changed my life. It's a history of art in Africa. And you might be like, wow, Christina, that's kind of boring. It's a textbook. It is a textbook. And you can see, though, that it is a well-loved textbook. A super well-loved textbook. I've got bookmarks in here. I love it. When I was in college, when I first went to college, I went to college not having any idea what I wanted to do with my life. I took a bunch of classes, and I, got my cores out of the way, which was nice. But then I kind of really fell in love with art and art history and entertainment, which is why I'm doing this now. But I fell in love with art history, and it wasn't until I got to the university level that I realized, through the help of a professor, shout out to you, Chip Cornell, through the help of a professor that was just fantastic. I mean, he really became like part of my family, that African art history was what I was passionate about. And it's lovely because not a whole lot of people have done it, not a whole lot of people have studied it, and there's so much to know, so much to learn, and the art of a people really gives you insight into the people themselves. And so this book, it changed my life because it changed my focus and my direction when I was in college, and I ended up being able to research and curate a collection of African art that had been gifted to this school like 10 years before, no, actually more than that, about 15 years before I went to school there. And so it was really a fantastic shift in my kind of paradigm, in my perspective. So let me know what kind of books have changed your life. What have you read that's shaped who you are? What have you read that's shaped your character? What are books you just think we need to read? Leave me a comment below. Connect with us on social media. You can find links to our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter in the description. Let's connect. Let's get talking about these books and what has changed your life. Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you for sharing this video with all your friends. Let's go on an adventure.